minutes is circulated.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Ms. Warnicki, I'm sorry. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of acceptance of the February 2nd, 2021 regular session of City Council meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Accepted. We have no add-ons or replacements or removals from tonight's agenda. We have no proclamations. We have no recognition or retirement resolutions. We do have one oral communication from Holly Frishy. She would like to talk about the water meter. Ms. Frishy, you have 4 minutes.
Take this off so you can hear me. Hello, everybody. I wrote my thoughts, so I stick to my 4 minutes. So good evening, everybody. I'm here tonight with concerns about the past meter decisions because I was chair of water and sewer and I am a citizen of the community that pays for water bill on time. I've watched the whole meter and software project play out over the last few years, and from additional research, listening to council meetings, and reading committee meeting minutes, it looks like council and the administration are looking to sell the water and sewer system to a private sector in the future. I hope this is not the case, but recent actions last week from Mayor Mern entering into contract with Utility Service Company, which is owned by Suez, on February 11th, and reviewing the contract myself, it seems that might very well be the long-term plan because of the nearly $5 million contract, including the annual service and maintenance agreement to the tune of $125,000 for the first year and going up steadily with a max of 5% each year. I thought when things moved forward with the additional legislation last year that our city employees were going to be installing on the meters. Now, Mayor Mern has committed a maintenance agreement with a subcontractor. Now, I'll remind you that we did a performance audit legislation before I left council, and that was completed. And the performance audit on the water and sewer showed that the department is highly efficient and cost effective. The state was very complimentary on our funds, so why would that mean we need to do a subcontractor in the private sector to run our meters? When a project is presented and approved by council, there is usually a benefit to the community with increased services or time, or many times cost savings. Where are the cost savings if you are duplicating services? By this contract being signed last week, it must mean that the city will be cutting staffing in the water department to justify the cost of meter maintenance agreement. For myself, I see no reason for the city to be bringing in a third party to handle the maintenance and operation of the meters. Findlay has a well-maintained water treatment and distribution facility. We have fair rates for our citizens and good staffing in the department that works like a well-oiled machine. So to remind you, I'm going to go back just real quickly as fast as I can to give a little bit of the history that I am sure I communicated many times over those last 2 years on council as chair of water and sewer. So originally the Irene administration in 2009 upgraded the water meters to electronic reading. Part of this upgrade was supposed to also decrease staffing, but instead our meter readers took on an additional hat in being the maintenance of the meters. Over the last 10 years, the water department has maintained and improved the meters at the cost of doing business. I believe that under the Mahalik administration, maybe our first year in, we had to do some appropriation to do some upgrades. Fast forward to 2018, I was approached as head of chair of water and sewer by Jason Phillips with an urgent need to discuss meters and software because 2G was going obsolete. I appreciated Jason that he came to me and he asked to get this started, and I was very open to the idea. Throughout the year, I touched base with Jason and Brian to see when they are ready to start this discussion.
I'm sorry, that's 4 minutes. Mr. Wilson.
Give Ms. Freshie a couple more minutes to finish her comments, please.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Um,
So where was I? The 2G. I know we touched base with Jason and Brian over the next year to see if they wanted to have a committee meeting, but they were not ready for it. We did have one meeting in March to discuss meters and software, but they were not prepared. We were supposed to reschedule that meeting in April, and that meeting never happened. There were no additional meetings in 2019. I want to remind council that the billing software was upgraded before Dean Adler retired at the end of 2017 and beginning of 2018. After that, Tammy came on board to run the billing department. And she had the discussion that she wanted a new system. I went out and met with Tammy and the staff. The main concern was that the system ran slow. It took 2 to 3 minutes to load when a customer came in to pay or had questions on their bills. There was also concern with the company not providing adequate service and support for the system. This was puzzling to me, so I went to computer services because we had also recently installed the black fiber system that should have taken care of some of that networking in my view. They had been looking at it, but they had no conclusion on how to repair it. From there, in early 19, I spoke in passing with Jason in the hall of the city building. He mentioned that he had a whole lot of projects he wanted to do possibly, and he was also considering taking out capital debt. The meter and software project that he mentioned to me was $15 million. I was taken off guard and asked him to send me a plan of the project that he would like to discuss. I also went to the auditor's office to ask questions about the process of taking on debt to understand what the water department might be asking for. This led to the meeting with myself, Jason, Brian, and Jim Stasiak to further discuss the meter and software and the steps needed to move forward with the capital debt if that was going to be the route. The meeting ended with Jason to get a price to purchase versus financing through Suez, getting a second bid from another vendor, calling Verizon to find out about the 2G, and completing a cost benefit. Jason appreciated the meeting and also forwarded me his 2019 to 2024 list plan of what he wanted to accomplish. From this arose Mayor Mern submitting legislation for software only in August of 2019. Without discussing in Water and Sewer Committee, this legislation came to council. The legislation did get tabled, and a performance audit was requested by myself and Jeff Webster. The year 2020 started as Councilman Greeno, who worked for the city for many years on the water side, assumed the reins of the chair of Water and Sewer. I reviewed his meeting minutes, as I'm sure you all have, with regards to this very high ticket price item. Unfortunately, nowhere did I see in the minutes where a second bid was being considered, evaluated, or even looked at, which in my eyes, as a citizen who pays taxes and pays her monthly water bill, extremely concerning. Council was not vetting this project to the public, and transparency was lost from the word go. When you see Mayor Mern flip-flopping with legislation from software to meters in less than 12 months, it is clear that something is going on. When the auditor stands before council on the record for the public to hear and present documentation that the process of going out for bid may have been mishandled from email communications he received, and council turns an ear from listening to this problem.
That's 8 minutes.
I have about 3 mini paragraphs left, but if you'd like me to stop, that's fine.
Do I
Can you
hear?
summarize quickly, Holly?
Okay.
So basically, the committee meeting dialogue is moving forward with the administration wanting to move forward without bids or options or weighing in discussion with the committee to vet the project. When the committee is looking at spending millions of dollars and no discussion about the entire sewer department and water department operation, it's concerning. When we have all these capital projects that they're looking at, I didn't even see in the minutes where we were considering that in the large plan with this large ticket item. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments to Ms. Frisch? Thank you. We have no petitions, we have no written communications, reports of municipal officers and departments.
Findlay Municipal Court Activities Report for January 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Police Departmental Activities Report for January 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City Income Tax Monthly Collections Report for January 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Fire Departmental Activities Report for January 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Summary financial reports as of January 31st, 2021.
Questions or comments? Mr. Station.
Hey, thank you. Real quick, I want to point out to you the new format for the snapshot. I think it's your second or third page. You've got some color graphs there. Been inspired by the administration to colorize some of the things I do, and as a non-millennial, drag me into this new century that started a decade ago. That being said, the first section there, that is your budgeted revenue versus expenses. And of course, the administration, as we know, tries very hard to stay well under budget, and we've done that pretty well over the last decade. And down below, came up with a way, I thought, to give you a better quick look at how you're doing against your reserves, whether it be your minimum reserve policy. Notice the second line is green, green is good. The best practice minimum reserve policy, you're also green is good there. We're looking good in terms of cash balances. Self-insurance fund, notice there that it's less than $1 million. $1 million has been our target since it was implemented under Robert Sprague. So I've got a cautionary yellow there, but certainly not critical. And then the severance payout reserve, thanks to your appropriation the end of last year, that's also green, and green is good. So as those colors change, if you don't want to look at the numbers, because we all know numbers are so exciting, I hope this helps, and I hope you find the new format helpful. And if you'd like me to enhance it at all or simplify it any more, please let me know. I'm open for suggestions.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Report to be filed.
A letter from City Engineer Thomas regarding Martin Luther King Parkway improvements, project number 328-03100.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding renewal of city's insurance policies.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Financial summary.
Questions or comments? Summary to be filed.
Treasurer's reconciliation report as of January 31st, 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding Hancock County Combined General Health District appointment. It does require council's confirmation.
Mr. Russell.
Yeah, so I'd asked the mayor to give us some information on Barbara Hesser, I believe is her name, before we would entertain a vote.
If I may, Mr.
Yep,
President?
you sure may.
All right, so BJ Pastor is probably someone you guys have interacted with and didn't realize. She is I had her send me her resume because she's quite accomplished, so I just wanted to hit on a couple of quick highlights. She is currently the Vice President of Patient Care Services and the Chief Nursing Executive for Blanchard Valley Health System. And she came to us most recently, prior to that she was the Vice President of Emergency Services with New Hanover Health System in North Carolina. In short, she has a long career starting as a nurse at the University of Toledo, as well as then working her way through overseeing LifeLight operations, working with St. Vincent's Medical Center, University of Toledo Medical Center, and a number of other facilities within the area before she came to Blanchard Valley, and has been her entire tenure since 2011 as the Vice President of Patient Care Services. Has been serving as one of the city appointees to the Hancock County Board of Health, was a part of the merger process, and so has been a great representative of the city of Findlay on that board, and has served as the board president most recently. There are officers out there, so we'll let them do their thing. Any questions about Ms. Pastor? Yes.
Mr. Hellman.
If I might, my wife saw this earlier when she was thumbing through this, and she knows Ms. Passmore and was very complimentary of her and her various accomplishments. And I underscore what you tried to say.
Yeah, just give us 1 second.
They
They're
ushered
getting
them
us sorted
out.
out.
Yep. I'm sorry, what?
All right,
ushered
if you
them
could repeat your.
Yep. I just want to
Continue
make
your
sure you're not
remarks
coming
again.
this.
Use your microphone, Mr. Holman.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those important words were left out. I just wanted to
Lost in
to
posterity.
concur with what you had said. My wife had glanced at this report earlier and said that she recognized Ms. Pazor and had worked with her, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago in Toledo, and underscored many of the things that you had just reiterated. So I would be very much in favor of it. She sounds like a very well-accomplished individual.
Yes, you know, I think any individual who has served as a nurse and has been in emergency and critical healthcare situations who can handle under pressure, and then also has been in an administrative role, she has a very good perspective of public health, operations, which I think is important, especially leading our public health board through these years and any potential future projects. So I think she would be a wonderful representative.
Mr. Russell.
I'd move for council to confirm.
Second, Mr. Hellman. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of her appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. She is confirmed.
Board of Zoning minutes for November 12, 2020, as well as January 14th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Minutes to be filed. Committee reports.
The Water and Sewer Committee met on February 3rd, 2021 to discuss the Blue Bonnet Bittersweet Sewer Project. We recommend that the project go forward after discussion.
Do I hear a motion to approve the committee report? Mr. Slough.
I would move to accept the Water and Sewer Committee report.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any discussion or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The committee report is accepted.
The Water and Sewer Committee met on February 3rd, 2021 to discuss a possible project on Township Road 212. The committee discussed the project and recommend no action at this time.
Mr. Hellman.
I'll move to accept the report.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Committee report is accepted.
The Appropriations Committee, to whom was referred a request to discuss the I-75 County Road 99 interchange, PID number 102375, project number 328-11100. We recommend approval as stated.
Mr. Slough.
Move for adoption of the committee report.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion, comments, or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the Appropriations Committee report say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Committee report is accepted.
The Appropriations Committee, to whom was referred a request to discuss the first 2021 capital improvements appropriation. We recommend approval of the 2021 capital improvements plan as presented.
Mr. Wolfson.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Slough. Any discussion, comments, or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the Appropriations Committee report say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The committee report is accepted.
The Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom was referred a request from Sean Farmer to rezone 610 South Blanchard Street from C1 Local Commercial District to R4 Duplex Triplex. We recommend to approve R4 zoning to 610 South Blanchard Street.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Move for approval of the committee report.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Committee report is accepted. Legislation. We have no resolutions, so ordinances.
Third reading for ordinance 2021-5, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hellman.
Yes, I recommend approval of ordinance 2021-005.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance 2021-005, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-7, an ordinance authorizing the service director and the safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids where required and enter into a contract or contracts for construction of various projects in accordance with the 2021 department equipment list, appropriating and transferring funds for said capital expenditures and declared an emergency.
Mr. Wilson.
At our appropriations committee meeting, Brian did a super job of going through and explaining his first set of appropriations and where he was spending that money. Really wasn't much different from what we've seen in years past. And for reasons that we've always discussed, one of the things that we as a city has the ability to do, since we have ready cash that we can go forward and get these projects bid early, tends to give us a price or cost saving measure when we go out early to get these bids. For that reason, I would like to make a motion to suspend council's rules and give this legislation its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Slough. All those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give ordinance number 2021-007 its second and third reading.
Just third.
Third reading.
Sorry, that was one more than I had.
Ordinance 2021-7.
Mr. Wilson.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of ordinance 2021-007, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
And Mr. Haas.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-9, an ordinance authorizing the establishment of the Findlay designated outdoor refreshment area, making certain findings and determinations and enacting regulations to that effect.
Next.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-10, an ordinance authorizing the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Hancock County Commissioners. A copy of said memorandum of understanding is attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit A.
Okay, next.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-11, an ordinance authorizing the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into an agreement with Rainick Ltd., whereby Rainick Ltd. shall donate all of its rights, title, and interest in and to said property as set forth herein and attached hereto as Exhibit A.
Okay, next.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-12, an ordinance accepting and approving an application for annexation of territory situated in the Township of Marion, County of Hancock, State of Ohio, and being a part of Section 6 South, Township 1 North, Range 11 East, a tract of land consisting of 8.584 acres of land more or less, hereinafter referred to as Amber Waves Development Annexation.
Okay, next.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-13, an ordinance amending chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by zoning the following described property as I-1 light industrial, hereinafter referred to as the Amber Waves Development Annexation.
Okay, next.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-14, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Okay, next.
First reading for ordinance 2021-15, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Yeah, question for either Don or Brian. As I understand this, this is money we have received from the county. We are simply managing the project. Is there particularly any reason why this should be taken care of tonight?
Yep, this is one of the 5 transportation projects that the city and county entered into a memorandum of understanding for. The project, the engineering was paid for all by the commissioners, and the project's paid for all by commissioners. The city's responsible for bidding the project and then providing construction inspection during construction. So that they had all the plans done, we bid it, we got bids in December, we submitted the pricing to the commissioners, they gave the checks to us, so now what I need is the money moved into the project so that I can get POs and get contracts around. So no city funds are in this other than, I think I'd asked for $500 because I had to put a legal ad in the paper. But all this money is from commissioners, it's county money, and no city money whatsoever.
Mr. Russell.
Ginger's got a check.
I'm sorry, I missed that, but Mr. Russell.
If there's no other questions for Brian, I would move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2021-015 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wurzer.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2021-15. Ordinance 2021-15.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2021-015.
Second, Mr. Haas. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wurzer.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2021-16. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service of the City of Findlay, Ohio to extend current contracts for insurance coverage for airport liability, automobile, boiler machinery, contractors' equipment, crime insurance, police professional liability, public officials' errors and omission liability, real and personal property be extended until July 2025 and declared an emergency.
Okay, next.
First reading for ordinance 2021-17, an ordinance amending chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code by rezoning the following described property, referred to as 610 South Blanchard Street rezone, which previously was zoned C1 local commercial district, to R4 duplex triplex.
Okay, next.
First reading for ordinance 2021-18, an ordinance authorizing the service director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into an agreement with the Verizon Wireless NASPO, I don't know, MA 152, to continue to participate in a joint cooperative purchasing program for the city of Findlay's wireless services and declare an emergency.
Okay. Old business, Mr. Stashek.
Thank you. This just take a moment, but I do need council's help. We've had some challenges the last couple of years in my department, particularly with accounts payable and with the deputy auditor and that. One of the things we have to do, and this is just a portion of the documentation we have to use. This is 2 of 8 notebooks, compliance information, things we get from the state auditor's office so that we can compare this city's books for audits on your behalf. And you are the legislative and funding authority. In going through these things over the last couple of years, more than half of the contracts that have come to our office have had to be sent back or come back to this body or somewhere because they've been incomplete and we've been unable to pay them as they're presented to us. That varies anything from a penny for a federal grant that you might have to appropriate to thousands and thousands of dollars. That being said, with regards to the contract that was just signed by the administration, the mayor, and sent back to the water servicing company. We all talked about it as SUEZ, but I think it's utility servicing company. I received that contract. I got it Friday morning when I came in. I got documentation today. I haven't had a lot of time to review it. but it's clear that I need your help in a conversation and working with our deputy auditor and myself, and as well as our accounts payable, so that we can move forward and pay this. And what I need is, I need three things, or there are three things of concern to me. One, tonight you appropriated an additional $400,000 to this project to add to the $500,000 that was already there. That's $900,000. The contract that's signed for 2021 is closer to 1.5 million than it is to 900,000. And it continues for 5 years. I'm mostly concerned because this is a water fund. The rules are a little bit different with regard to how a fiscal officer treats these monies. But it's not $900,000, it's significantly more. And that's just meters. And that leads me to the second point, is that it's a contract that goes beyond 1 year. This is a 5-year agreement. The total of the funds in the 5-year agreement, just the meters, is a little over 4.5 million. And then there's a separate item in here that's an adder, and it's a separate part of the agreement for servicing. It starts at $125,000 a year, goes up 5% per year, plus additional costs as determined. So we're looking at, as I said, closer to 1.5 million than 1.4 million, and a contract that probably exceeds $5 million, all sum total, over that 5-year period. And again, you've only appropriated a portion of the first year requirement. So with that, there's one other item that we look at, and it's something, again, that is my job to do, and it's hard to do, and I've got a great staff that's helping me do it, but it's been a burden looking at these things in this amount of detail consistently with each of these documents that come in, and that is, I am not allowed to pay for one thing with funds that were appropriated for another thing. And this is, in some cases, a fine line. We have meters. Everything we've talked about in this body, in your documentation, it says I'm replacing a meter system. This contract is for a meter system and a servicing contract. Those are two different things. They're clearly defined as two different things. And the documentation and support I received today with regard to Mr. Smelser's communications with this company demonstrate that they are two different things. So those three things being brought up, for me to pay this, and I'm happy to do it, but I need from this body legislation that covers those three items. That you cover the appropriation for the year in a manner that you know, and you're telling me, Jim, pay this because it is our intent to pay this full amount, this closer to 1.5. Again, I don't have the exact figure because I'm not reading from the contract right now. 2, that you are okay with paying a contract that goes beyond 1 or 2 or 3 years. That's a 5-year agreement. And 3, that you're okay and you intend those funds to go towards not only the scope of replacing meters, but also towards the scope of a servicing contract with regards to those meters. And if you give me legislation that addresses those 3 issues, I have no problem moving forward. My accounts payable person will have the documentation they need, and the deputy auditor will have what she needs for audit. And that's what I need. Thank you.
Mr. Wobson.
Jim, what are the 3 things again? You had service agreement, meter replacement was the third?
The first is money, appropriating the money, or telling me that the money is there and you plan to spend the money this year for the 1.5 million for this year's.
Okay.
The second is that you understand this goes beyond 1 year, that it is your intent that this money being appropriated is 1 year of a 5-year agreement. And there may be some other implications there from the language, but I haven't had time to look into it because the servicing company that we've contracted with consistently refers to a 15-year agreement. And third, that you're okay with it being spent not only on meters, but on a separate servicing agreement. So meters for 4.5 million, give or take, and a servicing agreement that goes from 125,000 in the first year to upwards of 150,000 in the 5th year. And if I have legislation that allows me to do that, we have everything we need and we can move forward.
Thank you. Any other old business? Mr. Hellman.
Regarding what Mr. Stachek has brought up, should this not be reviewed by the Appropriations Committee or the Law Director? I mean, those are significant discretions, I guess. Seems to me I can't make a decision on that until we get some advice and either concurs with what Mr. Stachek is saying or saying, you know, go ahead and do it. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on it or not.
The mayor does. Ms. Mayor.
But
I don't know if any of the council members that have been involved in this conversation over the last number of years would like to address any of the comments that have been made regarding this project, because I know we've had a number of specific meetings to discuss this project at length. One, I believe, was a committee of the whole where all council members were welcome to attend, and where we specifically went through and laid out how we did look at this as a 5-year project. I would clarify, however, a couple of points. First, the documentation, the agreement with, I'll call them Suez because that's what we've referred to them as, that's the company, even though many businesses have different names that are on the agreements. The phasing of the project is laid out within the agreement. It is not committing us to purchasing those items in any specific order. It's saying that we understand that this is a larger project than what we're purchasing right now, and that by looking at it as a larger project, there are some benefits. They need to be able to plan accordingly. If we say, hey, we want to ramp up the project faster, or we need to slow it down. We specifically went back and forth on that language to say that I didn't want to be committed to things in the specified years that they're talking about. The maintenance agreement is the support for the system, which allows us the transparency into these systems. So as many systems have, there is software needed to be able to have insight into that system. Yes, it is $125,000 a year. That is something that we have been talking about throughout it. We're allowing us to have feedback with the systems. It's allowing our customers, and hopefully I'm not misstating this and Tammy and Jason can correct me, but it allows our customers to also create an account and get on and look and monitor their information as well, and see when they are using high water, so they can tell their teenager that you owe me $50 extra because you took the 3-hour shower. So it provides transparency. It's part of having this advanced system. I want to remind everyone that the reason that we are needing to take action on this is because the 2G is going away. Additionally, our transmitters are failing at a very consistent and high rate. And right now we have a number of citizens who are not getting accurate readings on their meters because the transmitters have gone bad. And we are now only reading them every other month. So I had a citizen the other day who called me and said, I own a duplex, and typically my water bill is $300 a month, and the transmitter has been broken, and so you guys weren't out there, and I got a $1,300 bill because the toilet was running for 2 months, and nobody was able to warn me because the system and infrastructure we are supposed to be maintaining and should have been maintaining over the last couple of years has failed, and we failed to replace it. We kicked the can down the road, and now we are having to accelerate the project. Yes, we could have gone out and completely replaced every meter, every transmitter. We could have bought the Cadillac. What we did was we took our time to explore our different options and said, how can we phase this in and still have an appropriate infrastructure? Additionally, this first year is going to cost us a little bit more because we have to set up the network throughout the community to have the DCUs that read the system, so that we don't have to have staff go out to every single house and open the water meter pit and check the readings, or drive around and get very limited access. So this is not a multi-year contract that we are committing to at this point. We are looking at it, as we should, holistically, and that means that we need to have an understanding that if we decide to replace all of them, what would it look like? We are not privatizing the City of Findlay water system. We are not looking at doing, this is a utility that we see as a huge benefit to be able to offer to our community at a low rate. We're making a little bit of money to be able to reinvest into the infrastructure. We're not utilizing this as a way to fund a bunch of other items. And yes, there are meters that are being bought as part of the project as well. That's something that we have known has been an issue for a number of years as well. So I think, in short, I think there is a lot of confusion in the public still, and it is our responsibility to try to continue to clarify that. That's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. We still need to continue to move forward with this. The law director is certainly involved in any documentation and any agreement. I would not sign anything. Don probably gets tired of me saying, so you've reviewed this is good, you know, please tell me it has the blessing, we're all kosher. And so certainly he has been involved. Paul has been involved as we worked through the process, and he assisted in those discussions. But this is a big, complicated process that we have been talking about for a very long time. You all have authorized us to move forward with this project. At that point, we went then back to the company and negotiated a contract. The law director and myself, who you gave authority to execute the contract, have done that. It has been reviewed and is, in my mind, appropriate. And so I think we need to continue to move forward with this, and I'm happy to answer any other questions on it.
Mr. Wilson.
Mayor, thank you for that explanation. First question, is there any desire between you and Jason, the head of the water department, to sell our water system?
No.
Thank you. Number two, the service and maintenance agreement for $125K, is that something new, something that we don't have now? Is that correct?
Oh goodness, you're testing me.
And I apologize, I know there was some more for
well,
Jason. But
there are a number of different licensing fees that you have with different systems. This is obviously different. Yeah, Brian probably knows better than I. And one thing I did not mention additionally, when any mention of a 15-year agreement is related to the warranty that we have, which is a 15-year warranty for this product. Brian, do you recall any details about the
Service
maintenance
agreement.
and service agreement?
We have some maintenance fees now. The customer dashboard that the mayor was talking about, we do not have that now. That would be something that would be new. So
the 125 is we're offering our customers something new and above and beyond what they're currently able to get.
correct.
Yes, but it's also required for us to operate the system, and it's
Okay.
a standard fee that isn't really negotiable. And to clarify as well, inflation is typically about 3% annually. We capped it at a 5% increase because, as we all know, with technology, it's rapidly advancing, and they may have different features that come along with that, but it is, as we would say, a licensing fee to be able to operate the system.
Very good. Now, my last question then revolves around the length of the contract. Jim is saying this is a 5-year agreement, and that therefore gives him pause. It seems to me, though, the way that you're discussing this is we could cut this contract off at any point in time that we want. Is that correct?
Yes, and there is language to protect both parties, that if we said, listen, we've placed an order and we're gonna need 20,000 meters tomorrow, and then we call them the day after and say, oh, never mind. You know, there is some language to protect both parties in there, but we are not committing to any future purchases that would cause issues for us.
And I understand probably from Jim's aspect, you have to look at this from a worst case scenario. Is that correct, Jim? You're nodding your head. You don't really, you just can nod your head and say yes or no, but not that you have to come up and.
Actually, it's not worst case scenario. It's the way the language is. I understand what the administration says. I'm not here to question what they've done, where they're going. I'm here to say, based on my charge by the state of Ohio, through the state statutes, the ordinances, and everything else that I have to follow, and those compliance documents, I'm working with the deputy auditor. This agreement says if there's cancellations, there's fees, and there's things that go back and forth. There's language in there that says if inside the 5 years you don't, the whole 5 years is due. If we did certain things, I don't think, and again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not claiming to be an attorney, but when we look at an agreement from the auditor's office, if the agreement is dated for a 5-year period, that's a 5-year agreement. If the funds say it's this much each year over that period of time, in a normal agreement that's not water fund, we have to not only appropriate that money or account for how it will be paid over that period of time and set it aside. In this case, I don't have to certify those funds are actually physically there for those next 4 years because it's revenue coming in, with the caveat that I can't pay a nickel that doesn't come out of the water fund. So you can't transfer general fund monies to pay for this. But it's clear from that language that it's not that simple. You can't just stop. both, and I don't disagree that there's protections in there for both parties, but from my perspective, I think it would behoove this body to review the contract. And I think as a legislative funding authority, it might be worth your while to do that. Water and sewers could certainly take a look. This is where the money's coming from. They should take a look. They should understand what's happening here.
I mean, if I read through that contract and you read through that contract, and we both look at it two different ways, who wins the argument?
I'm not looking to argue. I'm looking.
Well, that's not my point. You know my point. My point is what you're asking us to do something here, which I
I'm asking you to
understand.
give me permission to pay.
I understand
So
that,
I can pay.
and I'm
That's all
with
I
you
need.
on that.
Yeah.
But my question is, contract language is what it is. Okay, you negotiate things to the best of your ability,
Sure.
from your side or one side or the other.
Sure.
I'm trying to understand, is it going, so are you saying that, hey, if you read this and you agree with the mayor on the way she is interpreting this and the way the law director is, then you're okay with that and then we can go forward with that. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying for me to pay, there are certain things I have to do.
Which is?
I can't pay for an item that was appropriated one way and then contracted another way. In other words, I can't pay, you've contracted for meters by, your appropriation says, auditor, pay for meters. We've even said here tonight, this is for meters and a new servicing agreement with Fancy Dashboard. Those are two different things. And the funding of the dashboard is split out separately in the contract. It's a second item, it's a separate item, and you haven't given me permission to pay for that.
But it's all in the
So
same contract though.
the state auditors are gonna come in and say, where was your authority, Jim, to pay for that servicing agreement? They said you could pay for meters.
But that would mean it was a separate agreement.
It is.
Correct.
It's,
But we signed one document that
there's two documents
encompassed
that are
both of
signed.
them.
There are two documents that are signed.
Mayor, was there two documents or one?
Yeah, there's two documents. There is sorry, I'm not quite as
No, you're
tall.
fine.
There is a scope of work document and a master services agreement.
Okay.
So from my perspective, to answer your question, I need 3 clarifications. So all I'm looking for, again, I'm not arguing this side. I'm saying, council, you're the funding authority. You've funded $900,000. Over the course of this year, we signed an agreement that's going to cost almost 1.5 million, 1.4 and change. I need you to tell me that's okay. I need you to look at that agreement and say, and Jim, this body, not them, this body says, yeah, it's okay that you're paying for meters and a servicing agreement. So just all I need is a clarification from you.
And what form does that take?
Resolution, ordinance, I don't care, just something in writing. There's never been a document in writing from this body to tell me that that money was for anything other than meters.
Do you want this separated out? I'm sorry, Dennis.
No, it's all right.
Do you want this separated out in two contracts and two different
No,
resolutions?
I don't care about anything. All I care is
But wait a
you
minute,
tell me.
you can't say you don't care about it. You just spent 15 minutes talking about it.
No, I'm saying to you, I need you to tell me it's okay to pay this in the form that the mayor has negotiated, signed a contract, and send it back to the company that in some form we're obligated to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hellman?
Thanks. Jim, before you run off, I was just going to ask the question, did you bring this up to the law director?
I received it Friday. I didn't receive the documents that I got until late today, that I got with regard to what was actually negotiated and how. There hasn't been time. And what I did say to the mayor when we spoke on Friday was that when you have these conversations, you have legislative, which is you who funded it, and they acknowledge that you funded. I acknowledge that you funded a portion of this. Then you have your law, your financial, and your administrative. So the law, we all know what that means. You have to operate within these legal boundaries. Financial is you have to operate within these financial boundaries, and the administration's job is to go out and do that. Wasn't included in any of it. Never saw this document until the very last minute. So to ask me that question, I'll give you the same answer. But in fairness to my staff, we need to be getting this information sooner. This is not fair for this to be put on me at the last minute, and we have to come to you in this fashion.
Same here.
Yeah,
This
it's
body-
frustrating.
This body shouldn't get it at the last minute
It's-
like this either.
it's
That's why I
frustrating.
asked if you run it by the law.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Station? Mr. Russell?
Through this whole process, we've talked about meter system, including transmitters and DTUs or whatever the specific acronym, as well as meters, as well as installation. So to say it was always just for only meters obviously these things don't run in a vacuum. They have to have communication software to communicate from meter to transmitter and transmitter to billing systems, and we talked about integration with billing systems. So in my mind, when we approved and gave our previous ordinances to move forward, we talked about the entire process. If adding the word system to meter system solves the problem, then let's bring back the old ordinance, add the word system, and then move on for it. I kind of echo Councilman Wiltzer's frustrations in this, and actually the others that I hear speaking.
I'm sorry, are you recommending that we pull that ordinance and amend it? Is that what you're suggesting? I would have to ask our parliamentarian if that's an ordinance.
No, I am not recommending that we pull the ordinance. I'm saying that sounds like what is being requested in order for this to be able to move forward. It seems like the equivalent of this is adding the word system to meter system, or to meter. So it's a meter system, not a meter. But in actuality, I believe council has always been talking about the entire scope of a project, from meter to meter software and everything in between.
Any other old business? Mr. Hellman.
One quick thing, what's the conclusion here then? Are we gonna add the word system and bring it back next week, next meeting?
Well, it was suspended and passed this evening.
I think there's probably a possibility that we need to set up either an appropriations meeting or a water and sewer meeting. But I think the last time we had a committee of the whole meeting,
Yeah.
because I think everybody needs to be involved with this since it is such a big project. So what's the pleasure of council as far as having a meeting to move forward with this?
So let me ask a question. As your president of council, this evening you passed an ordinance that gave the authorization to the treasurer's office, or I'm sorry, the auditor's office, to pay for water meters, not a water system. Per the Mr. Stashak, and that it did not include the service contract. The mayor takes umbrance with that, as does our law director. So my question is do you as a body then initiate legislation for that contract, right, for the maintenance of the system? Or do you take tonight's legislation and change it to include that? I think Mr. Stashak just wants a clarification so that if and when he pays that, as instructed by council, that once the auditors take a look at it, it doesn't give him heartburn for a couple days. So that's, I'm asking you guys. You've got a couple choices here. I think somebody has to make a decision. Mr. Russell.
And I would think that the maintenance contract, which sounds like a software contract for me, probably isn't a capital expense. It's a general expense out of the water fund, and so the fact that we allocated capital money for it, for this meter replacement project, which includes transmitters and a bunch of other stuff, regardless of whether there's a general services contract, it doesn't have a lot of relevance on the capital plan. The way I view it is that we have, that this body has given permission via past ordinance to the law director and the mayor and the administration to go and execute a project. They have done so, and that we move forward. And while we can have further discussion, it's further discussion about past legislation that already has been approved and approved in a previous time. I think the question, I'd look to the law director and say, do we have a contract in place with a company known as Suez to move forward. It's not like we're gonna go renegotiate this contract, is it? So that would be a question to Don. Isn't this ball rolling? And the question that's really relevant to this body that the auditor is saying is give me permission to pay. It has nothing to do with re-looking at it or re-explaining it to a committee of the whole.
To me, it seems that what we were talking about is a contract, and that what the legislation says does not work well with Jim permitting payments. So we have the contract, we can do a piece of legislation that resolves Jim's issues, and we're done. Pretty simple.
Do it.
I would request that you create that legislation.
We will do it.
I need a second councilman to, I got all of them. Let's say Ms. Warnicki also requests that. So what you're asking for is the legislation to clear up the matter for the auditor's office. That would include Mr. Greeno.
So will this legislation be for the servicing contract then?
That's my understanding. Mr. Stashak, I think that question was for the law director though.
Well, three items I need so that there's no ambiguity. One, you've only appropriated $900,000. The meters in 2021 are 1.2 million plus. The servicing agreement, or excuse me, I think it's 1.4 million, 1.2 million plus. Then the service agreement is in addition to that. And then the second thing is that acknowledgement that this agreement, it goes beyond 1 year. And then the third thing is, of course,
My only comment to that was that I thought the mayor said it does not go beyond 1 year.
it does. It's a 5-year agreement. And from the perspective of the auditor's office and how we would be audited and the deputy auditor. Thank you, Don.
Okay. Mr. Webster?
Yeah, and the way Jim has to look at this is the full extent of the contract potentially. And it does. It could run for 5 years. So he has to look at it from that perspective. I understand that, and that makes sense. But the mayor, the amount, the 1.2, no, I'm sorry, 1.4, 1.5 that Jim's talking about, is that accurate?
Again, so I'll send out the documentation that was previously shared. If you all recall, there was a spreadsheet that was presented at Water and Sewer that said, here is some potential phasing of this project. That is what they have shared in the scope of work, the potential phasing of the project. That does not commit us to doing it in those phases. We specifically have language put in there that says that we can adjust it as we see fit to meet the needs, demand, our ability to implement it, cost, recognizing I don't want to have to pay a bunch of money if things go south in a month or two. So we specifically have that language in there.
Okay, so what you're saying is the 900 that we currently have appropriated is enough for where you're at today?
For where we are at today, though, it still doesn't cover all of the transmitters that are currently not working. It is what we believe is in our ability to execute without additional manpower at this time.
Right, so basically that's part of it too, is even if we appropriated 1.4 million, we couldn't even spend it and get it done this year because we don't have the manpower to get it implemented.
Potentially, correct.
Correct, thank you.
Okay. Any other old business? New business? Ms. Mayor?
I'll just be really short and sweet. I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our crews that kept our roads so clear. I received, yes, I think a round of applause. They're all probably sleeping at the moment because I know they're going back out at 4 a.m. To salt and make sure things are still in tip-top shape. But you know, we haven't had a storm like that for a while, and they did a fantastic job. And I know have continued to go out, and our water and sewer folks and everybody was all hands on deck as they went around town and tried to load buckets of snow out of areas where it was piled up. You'll continue to see them working the next couple of days to continue to clear it out. I'm glad I just poked myself in the eye. Continue to clear snow out, continue to be safe, but just any messages to them would be much appreciated because they work long hours, they take a lot of pride in it. It is many times a thankless job because you only hear folks complaining, but they did a wonderful job. And COVID is still out there. Please be wise. Vaccines, we're ready as soon as we get them. It's still going to be a long road, and I won't bore you any further with that. Any questions for me?
Mr. Russell?
I just follow up on that. By any stretch of your words, that was a big storm, a significant event, and when most of the city woke up this morning, they had clean streets. And you put that after the year of 2020 and the year of COVID, which really challenged a lot of municipalities. This doesn't happen by accident, and it ensures it happens because we have the right equipment. We've made the capital purchases, and the people to operate that equipment. And it just speaks to the fact that this city has been running so well over the past numerous years, and the end result of that strong management by administration and the ability to develop a strong public works committee department is that you do have clean streets after a 12-inch storm in the morning. You wake up to clean streets, and you're right, to Matt and Dave and their crews, the biggest congratulations, but it's also a testament to really how the city of Findlay has been operated over the past numerous years.
Mr. Wilson?
Along those same lines, and to go along with Councilman Russell's comments, Mayor, the sheriff called level 3 this morning, which essentially cuts off all business in the county. Now we, as a city, we're in pretty damn good shape. Is there any way that we can opt out of the level 3 for the city inside the city limits and allow business to continue?
This
Because
seems like
we
a
cut
trick
off
question.
24 hours of business, of commerce in this city, and it did not need to be done because we were ready for it.
That is something that we can discuss. We
That's
also
a
have,
good answer.
I think it's also important though to recognize that we do have a large number of even our City of Findlay team members that come from the county or from outside of the county. You know, in non-COVID terms, we typically have 20,000 people that come from outside of the county into Hancock County each day to work. We also have about 13,000 people that go outside of the county. So we have this big movement. One of the things that I would say is certainly hopefully Zoom and work remote that we've all kind of become accustomed to has been somewhat helpful, but I do know a number of businesses were closed and impacted by the decisions, which was disappointing, but I will be happy to reach out to the sheriff and talk about that, but you know, maybe we can just help the county out a little bit more in the future so that they can have better roadways as well. But I know they did a great job, but when you get into the counties and have drifting snow and across fields and whatnot, it can be very complicated. So they did a wonderful job as well.
I appreciate that, Mayor. The Zoom call doesn't help you sell widgets at the retail store.
It doesn't, or meals in the restaurant. So.
And my chiropractor was closed. That was not.
Well, we were concerned about that.
And that was the worst. And one other thing.
Mr. Wilson?
I want to call a strategic planning committee meeting for March 2nd at 5:30 p.m.
And do you know who the members of that are?
Oh my God, it's been so long. That would be Dennis Hellman, Josh Palmer, Grant Russell, and Tom Shingledecker. You guys good?
What was the date again? What are you talking about?
March 2nd to be the next council meeting. Prior to the next council meeting, you have to get here an hour early.
I'll be here.
So it's at 6?
5:30. Give you a half hour to go get a cup of coffee before council starts. In case
Any other new business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Russell, second. Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. We are adjourned.
Take care of the situation.
March 2nd.
See what happens.
Who was the